Bills are back from their bye week, but before we turn the page to the Kansas City Chiefs, boy, do we have a very unexpected surprise for you. Welcome to the Buffalo End Zone Podcast, everyone. I am Jon Scott, and what a treat is in store here for this episode, because one of the biggest stars in the NFL media world is going to come and talk Buffalo Bills with me. ESPN NFL insider Adam Schefter here on the show to dive into the state of the Bills at this point of the season before they get out of the bye week and take on this daunting task of the end stretch as they try to reach the postseason. What does he think about Sean McDermott? What happened that led to Ken Dorsey's firing and evaluation of Josh Allen, the offense, the defense? And does he think the Bills have enough to actually overcome this mountain in the standings and sneak their way into the postseason? My conversation right now with ESPN's Adam Schefter. Adam Schefter, ESPN NFL insider, joining me. And Adam, before we get into it, I gotta be honest with you here. I had a little trepidation having you on the show, understanding you are a very proud Michigan man, and I have to admit to you, I was born and raised a Buckeye. So I just want to get it out of the way and see if we can move forward here as unified people today, understanding that maybe a week or so ago we were probably at odds.
John, I'm all about peace, harmony, and unity, and I'm happy to join you today and put aside any differences that we may have had that I never knew we had and move forward today with this discussion.
And just so everyone understands, I fully am aware of all of the recordings of this that are happening, so Adam is not to be held responsible as we sometimes know, Adam, that Michigan people can be. Joking aside, welcome to the Buffalo End Zone Podcast, and let's dive into the Buffalo Bills, because this season has not gone how most people expected it to go. In your opinion, they're 6-6 coming out of the bye week. Why are they where they are right now?
No, John, a little bit like the Ohio State season. It didn't go exactly the way people want it to go, right? So you've had to root for Ohio State, and you've had to track the Buffalo Bills. And I think the season so far to date has been disappointing to everybody there. Nobody thought that the Bills would be 6-6 at this point in time, but here they are in that position. But here's the good part. We're past Thanksgiving. We're into December, and the Bills have a chance to have the type of season that they want, even though they haven't had that to date. And so if they can find a way to get some momentum and finish strong here, they still have the capabilities and the potential to do those kinds of things. They have the quarterback who can get hot. If he gets hot, you don't want it to play that team. So there are still some advantageous factors, but we need to see some encouraging signs from this team that we haven't seen so far. And if they can get that done, then that would be fantastic.
You obviously have a fantastic pulse on the league as a whole, but locally here, to my surprise, to be honest with you, the fire is burning hot from the fan base underneath Sean McDermott in particular. From your vantage point, how much of that should be warranted, the heat falling on McDermott?
Here's the deal, John. It's part of the profession. When teams don't win, there is heat that's turned up on the quarterback and on the head coach. It's just the way that it works. Just like Josh Allen and Sean McDermott have gotten tons of praise heaped on them in other years where they've come through, where they've played well, where they've won in the postseason. People saluted them, praised them. It's how it works. And if that doesn't happen in this league, particularly after you've had that kind of success, you have a target on you. They know that. They know that's how it's going to work. And so right now at 6-6, it's not good enough for the city. It's not good enough for where that team should be. And if that's the case on any team, whether it's in Buffalo or Kansas City or Philadelphia or San Francisco, if the team is not performing, they're going to question and criticize the coach. Or comes with the territory.
There's a lot of people. I put out a poll, a couple thousand people voted in it coming out of the Philadelphia game. Did they think Sean McDermott should be fired? And it was actually overwhelmingly from, again, a small version of the fan base. But if you listen to talk radio, that a lot of people want him gone. How realistic is that possibility, though, from your understanding of things here in Orchard Park after this season?
Fans are very reactionary, John. When they don't win, I'm shocked that after a loss, your poll and the fans wanted him gone. I'm shocked. And guess what? I challenge you in addition to making the challenge to go to the onepledge.com today to pledge to get your family screened for type 1 diabetes, I'm challenging you to run that same poll if they win on Sunday against the Chiefs. And I guarantee you that the overwhelming majority of the respondents will be, no, we're not firing Sean McDermott. We want to keep him. It is a very reactionary world that we live in. So if you lose, the people are going to want him gone. If you win, they're going to want him signed to an extension. That's the way that it kind of works.
Yeah, I've told people I don't think he's going to get fired. I'm on the rare side. I don't believe it either. I look at the volume of things, the body of work in totality, but 13 seconds, the Bengals lost last year in the playoffs. That's just kind of where things are with them, and that's why it just seems unrealistic, and I know Terry Pegula just doesn't seem like someone who would be willing to just make another coaching change, something he's done a lot of on the hockey side with the Sabres and certainly early in his tenure with the Buffalo Bills with losing Doug Marrone and Rex Ryan here. Stability, how big of a key do you think that is to keeping this ship moving forward?
Well, I think some of the most successful franchises always are the most stable franchises, which is why I think even though you're asking fans to respond after a loss to what they would do, and a certain number of them would want them out, the fact of the matter is the Bills have been a model organization. They have been a very productive, strong, winning team. They've not gotten to where people want them to. They've come up short there. But the fact of the matter is I think there are a lot of people who would take the success that Buffalo's had and the prospects that they have for their future. So this season's not going the way that people want. But this story is still being written this year. There's still more time to have things work out the way they want. So let's see what happens here. And before we make any final rash decisions, and let's look at the full body of work over the course of a full season before you're figuring out what to do with that head coach of yours.
Now, one of the decisions that they didn't wait the full season was moving on from Ken Dorsey.
Yeah.
What do you believe happened there and timing-wise, and just why didn't it ultimately work out?
Again, they're living in that reactionary world too. And people were furious after that loss to Denver. And the offense struggled that night. And by the way, there were many aspects of the team that didn't perform up to the level that's expected in Buffalo. Ken Dorsey was the guy that paid the price for it that night. You could say he was scapegoated, whatever it was. He was the guy that got the blame the next day. And I don't think it happens and just stems from just one game. I think that builds up over time, and there are some questions, issues, criteria that become the basis for a decision like that. I don't know the full scope of things, but it's a situation where they didn't come through. They had a disappointing home loss, and they felt like they needed to shake it up. Now, there have been teams that have responded favorably to shakeups like that, and there have been teams that haven't. So, again, this is their opportunity to see how they're going to handle it and whether or not that was the right decision.
I think a lot of it maybe stems on the inconsistency, shockingly, of Josh Allen, who his numbers in totality, you would argue if the record was better, he'd be in the MVP conversation, but he just hasn't looked it, and even self-admittedly, Allen has not felt himself.
No, they haven't looked themselves all season, like you, and that's why we're talking about some of these issues, right? Like, they're 6-6. They've been good in spots. They had a chance to win the Philadelphia game, but it hasn't looked exactly like we expect it to look with the Buffalo Bills. Something's been a little off. And I think when they fire Ken Dorsey, they're hoping to see if there's a way to get back to the way they looked or the way they want to play. We'll find out whether or not it works, but they have been off this year, and that's why they're 6-6.
Biggest story in the bye week was the unfortunate arrest of Von Miller. Where do things go from here, Adam? Is there anything like league-wise that may come down this week or before the season ends that would make the decision for the Bills, or where do you see this playing out the rest of the 23 season?
I don't know that it's going to play out this season. I think the league obviously will look into it. I think I heard that the woman decided not to press charges or recanted her story or something to that effect. I don't know the specific details. Maybe you know more about that than I do, John, and can just kind of update me. But I believe I heard that last week after all of this went down later in the afternoon. I'm like, oh, okay, so this is a fluid changing story and who knows what happened. But however it played out last week, the NFL is going to look into it. The Buffalo Bills are going to look into it. And let's see what action comes out of this. Let's see what the circumstances were. Let's see what the situation was. I read the affidavit. The affidavit was disturbing. You can't have some of the things that happen in there. There's no place for that in society. And again, those were the statements she made to police. She later recanted them, I believe. So let them figure out exactly what happened. And when we know more, then we could make a decision, I guess.
I completely agree with you on that one. Von Miller coming back from an ACL. The Bills have dealt with a litany of injuries to key players on the defensive side of the ball as well. How do you feel they've navigated that with Sean McDermott now the play caller as well?
Look, every team in the league has had injuries and adversity. And, the best ones find a way to overcome it. And I don't mean to simplify this, but the truth of the matter is you can lose certain guys at certain spots. You can't lose the quarterback and think that you're going to have a chance to respond and bounce back. Certain guys absolutely are more difficult to replace than other people, and they lost some valuable players in Tre'Davious White, Matt Milano. But the fact of the matter is, they haven't lost their most valuable player. They haven't lost their difference maker. And as long as you have him, then you have a chance. Look at all the quarterbacks this year that have been wiped out for the season. Jets lost Aaron Rodgers. Not the same. Giants lost Daniel Jones. Not that they were playing well anyway. Not the same. The Bengals lost Joe Burrow. Rallied on Monday night. Very impressive. I thought that was tremendous with the way that they played. Teams that usually lose their quarterbacks don't have a chance. You don't lose your quarterback. Somehow it's up to you to find a way to overcome that. And so far, Buffalo really hasn't done that.
So where do things go from here? You mentioned injuries at quarterback. That's kind of the story of this AFC playoff picture is teams like Pittsburgh and Cleveland, now Jacksonville, Cincinnati.
Right.
They're trying to fight for their lives with their backup. Do you feel the Bills, with their Superman quarterback healthy as of right now, can actually overcome this seemingly large mountain and push their way into the postseason?
Well, that's my whole point is, we started the season talking about how deep and competitive the AFC was. So many great quarterbacks. Honestly, I don't remember the last time we had seen so many great quarterbacks in one conference. Like, it had been a while since we had seen something like that. And as the season has gone on, those quarterbacks have basically dropped out one by what? There?
Yes.
Did I lose you?
Nope, you got me.
Okay. Oh, I got you. Okay, I lost you from the screen here. Hold on one second. And as the season's gone on, those quarterbacks have dropped off one by one. And so now, as we go into December, to me, the Bills have an advantage over everybody else. They do have, as you're saying, you call them Superman. They've got a difference-making quarterback. We don't know that Jacksonville is going to have that. Cincinnati doesn't have that. Cleveland doesn't have that. The Jets don't have that. A lot of teams have lost their quarterback. Josh Allen just keeps going on. So as long as he's there, they're going to have a chance. Now, again, John, they can't play the way they have, and they can't not show improvement, and they can't not overcome some of these injuries. And it starts with the quarterback, but that's the reason he's paid the way he is, and that's the reason he has the attention he does, because that's the expectation, that he's good enough and tough enough and strong enough to help elevate everybody else and help get this team where they can. That's why there's so much attention, scrutiny, pressure on the quarterback position, because it is, in my mind, the most important, valuable position in all of sports, the biggest difference maker there is. And that's why teams like Buffalo that have one have a chance always, and teams that don't are cooked, not winning a Super Bowl without a big-time quarterback.
I mean, the Bills were searching for a quarterback for 17 years. That's why they missed the postseason.
You know how that goes,
for
right?
that. Exactly. I mean, they got quarterback purgatory was kind of the phrase that was thrown away.
In those 17 years, John, were we ever talking like this? Like, 6-6, disappointed, fire the no, because the quarterback now gives you a chance that you didn't have in the 17 years that you haven't had since Jim Kelly played quarterback there. When Jim Kelly played quarterback, it was like it is now. You expected to win, you should win, you were good enough to win, and quite often you did. And when you don't, when you have Jim Kelly or Josh Allen, that's when people start to get restless. And that's what's happening in Buffalo now, which is why either they're going to win and people are going to be happy and quiet down, or they're not. And that attention and criticism and scrutiny is going to continue to increase.
I'll get you out on just a couple quick generic ones, and then we'll get to the one pledge that you're here to talk about as well. The big reason, on top of not having a quarterback, the Bills weren't making the postseason and struggling for 17 years was New England. How in the world, Adam, does this all play out after this season, which is so far removed from the 2 decades that everyone had become accustomed to with Bill Belichick up in there with the Patriots?
Well, John, to continue our theme, what's wrong in New England right now?
They don't
Who's
have
playing
a quarterback. They don't have one.
Aha! Shocking. They don't have a quarterback. And look where they are. And guess what? They're going to finish with a top 2 or 3 pick in the draft. And they're going to have a chance to get a quarterback. And once they get a quarterback, assuming they make the right pick, then they're going to have a chance to be right back where they were, competing for the AFC East title with Josh Allen and Tua Tagovailoa, and whoever's playing quarterback in New York for the Jets, whatever quarterback they're down to at that point in time. Now, Robert Kraft has a decision to make after this season. And at some point, he's going to sit down with Bill Belichick, and nobody knows exactly what he's thinking, whether he wants to keep Bill or move on from Bill or how he wants to handle the situation with Bill. This is a Robert Kraft decision because Bill Belichick's a football lifer. And if New England doesn't want him, I think he's going to want to be involved in a football operation, coaching somewhere else. So it's a question of what Robert Kraft wants to do, and maybe he views it as saying, you know what, we're going to have a top 2 pick. Go take Caleb Williams or Drake May. Go let Bill work with them. Go get this team back to where we're used to seeing it, and they move on from there. Or maybe he says, you know what, let's make a clean break. Let's start it over. But we'll get an answer to that shortly after the season. I would imagine they're definitely going to be addressing the quarterback in the draft. And you'll get at least one new element in New England next season, the quarterback. And now we see if there's anything else to go along with that.
How important do you think Don Shula's record is for Belichick to hang around?
I don't know. I think that's a little overdone, personally. Like, do I think that he's going to the office each day saying, boy, I got to get 20 more wins to catch Don? I just don't think he thinks like that.
Well, that's, I guess, music to ears depending upon the side of the coin you're there. Kansas City looks a little more vulnerable, especially offensively. Is it just a recency bias or what the standard they've set, or are there legit concerns and issues there?
Well, I think a little bit like Buffalo has looked off, Kansas City's looked off. The defense has looked better this year. The offense hasn't looked as strong. You got a lot of young receivers, different offensive line. They've looked a little bit out of sync. Again, just like Buffalo has Josh Allen, Kansas City has Patrick Mahomes. And so I still think in the end that they're going to have something to say. So Buffalo's challenge is to be able to get into that position, to be able to have something to say, which we don't know whether they're going to be able to do that. Kansas City is going to make the playoffs. Kansas City is going to get its say in the postseason. The question is whether Buffalo will be there to join them.
And we get a little preview of what we thought would be maybe a postseason matchup this coming week as the Bills come out of the bye week. Adam, before I get you out here, I know something really important to you is the one pledge. Tell our viewers and listeners what that is and why it's so important.
Well, John, I'm honored because Santa Fe engaged me as a spokesperson of this project because I've watched my wife, who's a type 1 diabetic, live with this disease. I know detecting it before her diagnosis could have given her valuable time to prepare for type 1 diabetes. And Sherry and I, my wife and I, also know that screening our children for type 1 diabetes is important because having a family history of T1D is the highest risk factor for developing the disease. So we've had our daughter screened twice. We've had our son screened. And that's why I'm asking everyone to join me in supporting our movement. Go to the onepledge.com today and pledge to get your family screened for type 1 diabetes. And as I have come to know, making a decision today to screen and get your family screened could help your child's and your family's future by giving you information early. So pledge to get them screened. I'm all about information, John. I like information, and there's no information that's more important than finding out if something is not right with your family. And my last thing, John, is don't forget to talk to your doctor about being tested and screened early for type 1 diabetes. Very important, very helpful, very critical.
100%. The one, the number one, theonepledge.com. We know you're all about information. Thank you for bestowing some of it upon us here this afternoon. And I didn't actually see you pick up your phone once, which is a shocking thing in 20 minutes. Is that happen often?
Well, John, you may not have seen it, but maybe I did do it.
You are truly top of your class, even as a Michigan man. I appreciate the time. ESPN NFL Insider Adam Schefter, thank you for joining the Buffalo End Zone podcast.
Thank you for having me, John. Thank you for supporting the One Pledge.
Hope you enjoyed my conversation with ESPN's Adam Schefter, diving into all things Bills at this point in the season. And now we can move forward and start talking about another sensational matchup between the Bills and the Chiefs in Arrowhead. Kevin Carroll will join me later this week as we dive into the matchup and get ready for this stretch run as the Bills have one heck of a tall task ahead to try to push their way to the postseason. Thank you for joining me. This has been the Buffalo End Zone Podcast.